Good morning. We are going to look at After Effects for the very first time today. And I'm going to walk you through everything about the interface, and we're going to create a new little animation in After Effects in this first and this second lecture. So in this first lecture, we're going to go through everything related to After Effects that you need to know to start your project. Okay, so this looks like a lot of stuff, and it is, but we're going to simplify that out into panels. Okay, so first thing, let's talk about structure. Now this is our first panel that we're going to work with. It's called the project panel. And I am going to import some footage into this panel. I'm going to import, and actually you can import video footage, you can import Photoshop files, Illustrator files, any type of graphic, and they're all going to show up in here. So we have name, type, size, and frame rate. So I am going to import multiple files because I have a few things that I've collected for this project, all of which are in D2L. And the first rule of After Effects, so here's my folder for this class. Is to make a folder for every project. This is my project for lecture 1. And you'll notice I have a nice little JPEG of the Greenville campus. I have the logo, and I have the panther. I'm going to shift select all three, and I'm going to, if you see create composition checked or multiple sequences checked, please uncheck them. Notice what I'm not importing, and that's my project. .aep means After Effects project. So I'm going to import all three of those files, and you'll notice it gives me that same dialog box again. And that's because I asked it to import multiple files. We don't want to do that. We've already imported all the files we want. So our number one first lesson about After Effects is that everything in your composition goes in one folder. So just like web design, After Effects only links to your video footage, your graphics, and whatever. Until you render out a final composition, it does not create a version of that that's playable. So in other words, while you are working in After Effects, it will always be looking for those files. Therefore, you must have all of them in one folder. You can't move them around, or After Effects won't be able to find them. They will show up as broken links. So please, everything in one folder. Number one rule of After Effects, everything in one folder. Number two rule of After Effects, let's save, shall we? So I'm going to do Save As. So I already have a project which is misspelled, by the way, and I'm just calling it Project Lecture 1 Sharp. Actually, it's not misspelled. Project Lecture 1 Sharp, and it's an Adobe After Effects project, and I'm saving it within that folder, so everything in one folder. And I do want to replace it, haven't done anything with it yet. Okay, now let's move over one window. This is the composition window. So you can see here we have new composition or new composition from footage. All right, we're going to ignore new composition from footage for now, and we're going to create a new composition. Now, what is a composition? A composition is an After Effects project that's project within a project. Okay, so when you work in Illustrator, you would think about an artboard as part of the Illustrator document. You can have as many artboards in Illustrator as you want. You can have as many InDesign pages as you want. In Premiere, you can have as many sequences as you want. Similarly, in After Effects, you can have as many compositions as you want. So a composition is an animation, a video, and you can have multiple compositions that make up one project. Okay, so we're going to call this composition not comp 1. We're going to call it type. We'll call it GU bump. Okay, so we're going to create a little video bump. And I have set the preset to, there's a number of presets here. So I'm setting it to HDTV 1080 29.97, which gives us 1920 by 1080 pixels. And that's about a 16.9 aspect ratio. And the standard video rate, which is 29.97 frames per second. Okay, resolution. This is not the resolution at which you will render the project for the final output. It's the resolution at which you are seeing the project. So look at our options here. Now we could view our project in full resolution, but that would be really slow. And we could view our project at half resolution too, but we're going to go with the After Effects default and view it at 1/3 resolution. So it's going to render out at a higher resolution at which we are previewing it. Okay, so our start duration for our start time code is going to be 0. Okay, and our duration, take a look at this, is going to be 1 minute. All right, now our background color, I'm going to leave it at black, although you could make it any color you liked. For example, I could make it Greenville orange, but I'm not going to go there. All right, so I'm going to hit cancel on that, keep the background black, and hit OK. Now we have a composition, and notice what was added to the project. It's called GU bump. That is an After Effects composition. We're going to animate all of our stuff on this GU bump composition, which is right here. Now right now there's nothing on the composition, nothing at all. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is drag GU Campus onto the composition. Okay, and as you can see, it looks very pixelated. See that? Now if I set that to full, it looks a lot better. If I set it to 1/3, it looks pixelated. So you see what the difference is. Now this particular image is very big, and I'm not going to size it down. Why? Because I'm going to animate it. I'm going to have it pan across the page. Okay, so we are going to start it, maybe not in the sky, but we're going to start it right down here. So our beginning position for this keyframe is going to be right about here, and I'm eyeballing that. But if you want to check the resolution, you always can by moving it to full. This is how your video will look in its final output. I'm going to move it back to 1/3, and because I'm paranoid, I'm going to save. All right, so now let's look at what we now have. We have the timeline. Okay, so GU Campus goes from 0 to 15 seconds to 30 seconds to 45 seconds to 1 minute in the timeline. So see that? This is our playhead, and this is our timeline. Now, if I want to look at things second by second, I can look at things up to 1 frame, 2 frames, 3 frames, 4 frames, or I can dial back down all the way to where I was. So right now nothing's happening. I don't need to look at things in detail, but that's our playhead. And right now this piece of this graphic, this GU Campus graphic, is sitting there for the entire duration of the animation. Now right now it's doing absolutely nothing, but that's okay. All right, so there's our timeline, there's our composition, what we're going to see. Here's our timeline, how we're going to work with it, and here's our project, which contains all of the files that we're going to use. Okay, so other cool stuff. All right, take a look at this, the character palette or panel. So right here, we're able to create types. For example, we are going to create some type that moves across the screen, and works just like Illustrator or Photoshop, and so we can create type there. Notice down here we have sort of a sub panel. So if I switch that to libraries, presets, you can see there's the little arrow here, and this shows us what panels are grouped together. And I chose this one for a very simple reason. We're going to create some type first in our character panel. And then in effects and presets, take a look at all these. We are going to maybe blur and sharpen it, maybe we'll distort it, maybe we will create some behaviors. Maybe we'll create some behaviors that involve text, like animate in or animate out. So those are basically canned or preset behaviors that we can make our graphics and type do. Okay, so all those panels are grouped together. Okay, so we've got libraries, character. I'm going to set it back to character right now. We have other panels that are grouped together, info And audio, I'm going to set it to audio because I don't have any audio levels at the moment, but we're going to put in a piece of music and possibly some narration, so we'll be able to watch our audio levels. Info is for anything visible, the X and Y position of an object, and whatever its RGB values are. Okay, so I want you to, let's try one other thing here. So we've got three grouped panels here. One of them is effects and presets. Let's go to that. Let's go to our animation presets, and we are going to look at text. And let's look at 3D text. Okay, and so once we have that going on, you can also control those through effect controls. And we're going to go through that in just a little bit. Okay, so right now we have, let's look at a couple other things within the composition panel. All right, so as of right now, first of all, we can, After Effects is smart. It's going to give you tooltips when you mouse over. So there's our primary view, Adobe Immersive Environment, how big are we magnifying this thing, and right now it's at 200%, and I'm going to switch that to fit. Okay, so this shows me my entire After Effects project. Now, that's a little different, isn't it? So this is our entire project at fit, in other words, fit to window, and it's at 76%. So as you can see, my graphic is a little bit smaller than the actual project. Okay, well that's a bit of a surprise, isn't it? So I'm going to center this graphic visually within the composition, and I'm going to save it again. And now let's mouse over to our next. So we're going to have it fit. Okay, over here, grids and guides. Okay, grids and guides are very nice. Okay, title action safe area. If we were showing this on television, which we're not, this would be our action safe area. This is the Academy aspect ratio. Here's a 16.9 Academy aspect ratio. This is our title safe area. Back when screens were curved, we needed to worry about this a little bit more, but I'm actually going to turn it off. Okay, so if you run into a place where where your employer says, hey, are you sure this is within the title safe area? That's where we go in After Effects. Okay, it's nice to have guides. Rulers, we don't need that method of that sort of precision at this point. Grid is exactly what you would expect it to be. At some point we may use it, but not today. So for right now, we're just going to turn off the grid. We're going to turn off guides. We're going to just kind of eyeball this composition for right now. Okay, so this toggles masks. All right, if I wanted to isolate Hogue Tower here, I would use a mask. And if you've used Photoshop in any capacity, you know what masks are, and we're going to be reviewing them later on. But for right now, we could turn them on and off here. Here's where we are. Right now we're at 0, 0, 0, 0 in the timeline. As you can see, when I move up, my timeline moves up. Right now I'm at 39 seconds. And I'm just going to move that back to 0 for now. Okay, take snapshot. This is actually really important. If you want a nice screenshot of where your project is at the moment for any reason, whether it's a poster or just to show a client, whether it's for a website or whatever, you can quickly take a snapshot of the screen, which is awesome. Okay, and it'll also show it to you once you take it. Okay, show channel and color management settings. All right, this is pretty easy for us right now. We've got because this is screen-based, it's red, green, blue, and we also have the option of an alpha channel or mask. Again, worry about it later. Okay, over here, region of interest, toggle transparency grid, active camera, we're going to worry about that stuff later. And if we wanted more than one view, why would we want more than one view? Simple. We would be wanting to work in 3D space. Right now we're working in 2D space, but there it is. Okay, so pixel aspect ratio, fast previews. Right now fast previews we can turn them off if we want to preview at final quality. Adaptive resolution is After Effects, oh, I guess you could say it's best guess. We're going to leave it there. If we were working on something very complex or in 3D, we might choose one of the faster previews like Draft or Fast Draft or even Wireframe. But we're going to leave it there for now. Timeline, composition flowchart. Again, not very complicated stuff we have going on right now, so we're not going to worry about that. And exposure. So again, that's what all the names of all these things are, but we're not going to adjust exposure on anything right now. We're going to leave that for later. But that's everything we need in our composition panel. All right, now let's move over to something we can use a little bit more, and that's tools. Okay, so by default, the good old selection tool, straight from Illustrator and Photoshop, is selected. The hand tool allows us to move the composition itself around. Rotate tool will allow us to rotate stuff in the composition, which I don't want to do. Okay, this is the camera tool. So notice there's tools under the tools here. Orbit camera, track Z. Right now, we're not going to worry about the camera. That's for later. And pan behind, again, works with the camera, also for later. But this we might use right away. Well, that looks like Illustrator and Photoshop, doesn't it? Rectangles, ellipses, polygons, and stars. We're going to create some of those when we create our first composition. And the pen tool. Straight from Illustrator and Photoshop, the pen tool is ubiquitous in all Adobe Creative Cloud programs. Type for creating type. Look at what it highlights right there, our type panel. We can also paint with a brush. We can clone stamp and erase, just like Photoshop and Illustrator. And this is called a rotor brush tool. This is Puppet Pin, Puppet Warp, which we're going to get to later. So right now the main tools we're going to use in the toolbar are selection. We can zoom in and out if we want, but it's, in my opinion, a lot easier to just use this. And we're going to use, we might use rotate. We'll probably use the shapes. We'll probably use the pen tool and the type tool, and the rest of them we can kind of let go for now. Okay, so now we've gone through everything in the project panel, everything in the composition panel. We've gone through all of the tools. Now let's take a look at the timeline panel. All right, so I accidentally created an empty text layer. So when I clicked on the type tool there, it creates a text layer for me. I'm going to just delete that and I'm going to create a text layer on purpose. So I'm going to click on the type tool and I'm going to click and I'm going to type welcome. All right. So here is the default typeface. I'm going to highlight it, and now let's change a few things about it. So we looked at this, it's Oswald, which I have no problem with. It's 215 pixels. I'm going to just make that a bit smaller. And I can move that around with my move tool. And I want you to notice something. So my purpose is not to teach you the type tool because basically it's the same in Illustrator and Photoshop. My purpose here is to show you that whenever I put something into our timeline, it appears as a layer. So these are layers. I've got the GU Campus layer and I've got the Welcome layer. Okay, all right, remember the modes from Photoshop. Multiply drops out white. Screen drops out black. And then we can look at all kinds of other color modes right now. So I'm actually going to leave the type alone, and instead I'm going to drag the panther into my composition. Now the panther has a background of white. Now here we have the panther, and it is in normal mode. So I said screen dropped out white, right? Okay, so that doesn't work exactly the way we want it to, but what we would probably want to do, let's look and see if I can get a mode that's going to help me out here. I'm going to put it in overlay, which I'm going to move the word welcome over. I'm going to use the GU Panther. And overlay mode is kind of nice actually because it's going to allow me to still have that white square for emphasis. I'm going to grab the type here and I'm going to make it the same size. Of course, we don't want to stretch it. I am going to make the size of the W the size of my GU. Okay, so there's one way that we could use modes, and that's all I want to use modes for the moment. I'm going to go ahead and save it. Now, let's look at what we have here. So preserve transparency. This logo did not have any transparency. It had a white background. That's problematic for us. So we put it in overlay mode, and we could put it in any other mode, and it would change the way the color displays on the screen. Okay, so I'm actually going to put it back in normal mode. So preserve transparency, track matte. Matte is another word for mask. We are going to deal with that later. I just want you to know what it is. All right, but let's start from over here. Okay, so just like Photoshop and Illustrator, we can hide and show layers. If we had audio here, we could solo or mute it. This is for keyframes. Actually, and we can also lock. Okay, so I'm going to lock my GU Campus logo so I can't be moving it around the screen accidentally. All right, so moving over here, we have a few things that we're not going to worry about right now. For example, 3D space. Adjustment layers. Doesn't that sound like Photoshop? Motion blur. That we're going to work with that once we start animating. Frame blending, again, we'll work with it when we start animating. And effects, turning them on or off. When we have lots of effects going on, it slows down our preview. Sometimes we want to turn them on or off, but it'll also show if we have effects here, and that's valuable to know. Okay, quality and sampling. Okay, so very pixelated, dotted line. Straight line is our medium sampling rate, and then high quality gives us this curved line. Okay, so I'm going to keep it on the straight line, which is sampling. When we move the type, the images, or whatever, it's not going to try to sample every pixel and make it perfect. It's going to give us a rough preview, and that's fine for now. Okay, shy. Look at this little guy here. Shy hides layers in the timeline. So this is kind of a new funny thing. It's not a new funny thing, but it's new to us in After Effects. We're going to use it in a bit, and parent and link we will also use in a bit. Okay, so some of these are repeated. Motion blur, hiding layers, draft 3D, composition flowchart, but that's essentially the After Effects interface. Okay, so I'm going to set up a basic composition. I'm actually going to delete this. I'm going to move welcome over here, and I'm going to use a different logo, and it's a PNG or ping, and it's enormous. Holy cow. So the first thing we're going to do to it is we're going to look at it. It's 2,786 pixels by 1453 pixels. Now, okay, so what we can do here is we can do this the old-fashioned way, in which I shift-click and resize it down. I could size it in Photoshop so that it would be the size that I want. But I actually want it this big because I'm going to fade it in and fly it in. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that one for right now. So I'm going to put it at the place I want it to be in the beginning of the composition, which is off screen. So I can have elements that are off screen. There. Now I can't see it. So I have my Greenville University ready to fly in and resize itself. I have the word welcome here, and I have the Greenville University comp itself, the JPEG that's going to serve as our background. All right, and with that, I'm going to end this video, and we're going to start some animation in the next project.